Welcome to another Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor. And I sort of feel like I've been left out of the party for the last 40 years. You see, this is actually the first time I've ever sat down and had a conversation with Dr. James Poirier, our Indiana neighbor. And, Doctor, just so you know, when I put it out on Facebook that I would be talking to you on Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor, I felt like I was new to the neighborhood, throwing a party for you, and all of your friends and neighbors were coming because the comments just exploded. So, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time, and welcome to Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, I'll tell you what, like I said, when I first put it out there, I was amazed because the literal truth is that you and I have maybe had two conversations, maybe in our lifetime. And true to character, according to everything I hear on Facebook and those comments, they were both things that Dr. Poirier was doing that was very good. He was complimenting me. I mean, we're on a broadcast. I appreciated that. And then the other thing, you came and you donated to our grandchildren's lemonade stand for our sister-in-law who passed away recently. So very good traits already. I knew that, but I just did not expect the outpouring of love, affection for a man, I guess I should have, who's been serving our community in the medical field for 40 years. And Doctor, we'll talk a lot about, not a lot, we'll talk some about the medical field, but we want to get into a lot of other things and find out a little bit more about you. And typically we'll start with your upbringing, and we will in a moment, but let's just get this out of the way. So after 41 years here in town, you're retiring. Tell me, when is the retirement date, and when should it have been?
Uh, the the plan was that it would have been July the 31st.
So you should have already been retired.
Should have already been retired. And I've joked with my family and friends, and I've stated that I've been in Martin County long enough that I caught the disease that happens at Crane. I retired on a Friday, and the next Monday I'm back at the same desk doing the same work under a different contract. Because I've told the hospital, we fortunately will have a new doctor coming. And the bad news is, like me, she's from Canada.
Really?
So there's extra paperwork to be done. And I told the hospital that I'm going to try and stay until she comes on board, or very close to that date anyway. So I'm still here doing much the same as if I wasn't retired. So
well, that's amazing. So the new doctor coming to Martin County, Indiana, is from Canada. The advice you would give to that doctor would be what?
I think the advice that I would give to most of the younger doctors is probably something that I didn't do very well, and that is, you're going to be very busy, but try to make your family your priority. It's very easy to get very busy. You're busy enough with the office practice itself, but then people want you to serve on this committee and be president of this group. And it's very easy to get tied up doing so much stuff that family gets put, well, I've got this meeting tonight in Jasper, or I have to go to Bloomington for the Cancer Society meeting, and things get pushed aside. So I think learning how to say no is incredibly difficult, but I think that it's important to make time for your family and make them the priority. There's obviously going to be times that there's going to be conflicts, but I think it's just so easy to get involved in all these things that sometimes the things that are most important, you find out 20 or 30 years later, you kind of let slip a little bit.
Have you met this new doctor?
Yes. She actually did her family practice residency through Indiana University, uh, medical school in Jasper. She has worked some days at my office while she was training. So yes, I've met her a number of times, and
So
I
she's somewhat acclimated already to this
yes,
way of life. Yeah.
she's been here for just over 3 years,
Okay.
and she and her husband have recently purchased a home in Jasper. So
Very
so it'll
good.
be good. I really did not think it is so difficult to get doctors to go to small towns now. I just didn't think that we would get somebody to come here. So I'm really, really happy about that. I feel much better leaving knowing that there's going to be somebody coming.
Now, will you be fully retired?
Uh, what I've told the hospital, I do administrative work. I see patients Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And then Wednesdays and part of Fridays, I do nursing home work. And I have about 7 nurse practitioners. I have the ones at my clinic here in Lagodi, the Shoals Clinic, French Lick, and Candleberg. I have all those clinics that I do chart reviews and consultations for the nurse practitioners. So I'm going to stay doing that for a while. I'm going to stay doing some limited nursing home work for a while. And I've also told the hospital that I would be available, uh, emergency fill in kind of thing, somewhat like I'm doing now. But at some point in time, I would really like that just to be an as needed rather than continuing the full work
Sure.
schedule.
Sure. So let's start from the beginning. Your upbringing. What was life like as a young child in Nova Scotia? Was it much different than Southern Indiana,
Not really.
except for the winter time, maybe?
It's remarkable how similar this area is to where I grew up. The only thing is there's no ocean that I can.
No, there's not.
My entire childhood, I was probably the distance from uh, the marathon station at 231 and 50 to probably the car wash that Stuart Blakey's zone, no farther than that away from the ocean my whole childhood. So almost always you could look out the window and see the ocean.
Yeah,
But
that's amazing. That's good. It's got to be a beautiful area.
yeah, but as far as people and the the, the way people live and the type of people, very similar. And it's one of the reasons why actually I ended up here. Uh, when I finished medical school, I actually practiced for almost 2 years in a town close to where I grew up. I did not want to go to my hometown, but this was very close and really intended that I would stay there. But I was the new kid on the block, and there were very few emergency room doctors then. Big medical centers had them, but most hospitals didn't have them. So I ended up spending most of my first year plus doing emergency room, and I did not like it.
Does anybody? I mean,
Oh, I think lots of people really like it,
do
and
they?
for different reasons,
Yeah,
but I just did not like that.
yeah, that'd be difficult.
So we decided we were going to move. We thought, well, we may as well take this opportunity. We're young, move somewhere. Uh, let's go to the States and spend 3, 4 years and we can travel around. Now, I had to come to an area that was physician shortage. So I looked at opportunities in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and here. Uh, we felt that if perchance we would stay somewhere, that this was as close to home as we would get. The people that we met, the area, we just really
Well,
liked it.
in those other states, did you visit them? I know you visited them probably, but uh, is that all it was just a visit to see if you liked the area?
Yes, we went. These were set up through a recruiting
Okay.
agency. Uh, Usually spent 2 days at each community. Uh, you would get to meet the other physicians. You would get to go to the hospitals. Uh, you would meet with the bank manager and real estate people as to what was available. You would go over a tentative contract as to because it was for a minimum of 1 year, but usually they were 2 year opportunities. And uh, we saw all four places over about a week's period of time. And then when I decided that most likely we were going to seek coming here, I came back again for a few more days to talk about the contract and actually then go and see different houses and
Okay.
uh,
So we'll talk about this community in a moment, but let's go back. What did 10-year-old, did they call you Jim, Jimmy? What did they call you back then?
uh,
James?
interesting story. Uh, my family, I was Jimmy,
Okay.
but in school, most likely because of, well, I went to Catholic school, so we had nuns all the way through. It was James, and there was no Jimmy. So a lot of my friends called me James, but most of my family, it was Jimmy.
All right. So what did 10-year-old Jimmy Poirier want to do in life at that time?
You know, I really feel that I had a pretty wonderful childhood and enjoyed being a kid. And I don't think at 10 years of age, I had much concern about anything other than being outside and playing and having a good time. I don't, there really wasn't any
Any aspirations that you
specific
had?
direction.
Nothing within the medical field at that
No,
point.
oh, absolutely
You
not.
hadn't watched
No,
Dr. Welby Medical Center and all those shows and said, that's what I want to do.
no.
Not at that point. So what'd you do as a kid?
We
You went
used
out,
to refer to Marcus Welby as "make us well by"
make us well by.
because the slang word that was used a lot in my area was "bye." Hi, bye. How are you doing today, bye? So it was "make us well by"
Is that
instead of
right?
"Marcus well by."
Well, okay. So you enjoyed life. What did you do? What did you and your friends do on a typical summer day?
Of course, back then there were no video games,
No.
little or nothing on television. So when you get up, you went outside and you played outside all day. And when you were little kids, you had a bike or a tricycle and a wagon and you hauled rocks and moved dirt. And we played baseball by the time I got to 10, 11, 12. We played baseball from the time the snow melted in the springtime until it started to snow in the fall. And if you had at least two people, you could play baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And we played a lot of baseball. We played cricket. Uh, we played road hockey, which is hockey with a ball at that time. So it was basically playing games. You had close friends that you spent almost every day with, and you were outside all day. And of course, different time, different age. There was no concern about violence or kidnapping or
Right.
anything like that. You went in the morning and you sometimes you went home for lunch, sometimes you were at a friend's place, and you had a time to be home, and you were just out all day.
Now, I have heard that the Glaze Bay Police Pirates were pretty good in Little League. Is that fair to say?
We we had a very good little league
I've got
program.
pictures.
Had a very good little league program in the town that I grew up. There were 12 teams in the league, and it was very well organized. Even back then, it was associated through Williamsport. Glace Bay has had several teams that have made it to the Little League World Series representing Canada. Not when I played, but it was very well organized, well supported through the community. So baseball was a very big program, a very important part of the summertime.
You were pretty athletic, weren't you?
Uh, baseball, hockey, speed skating.
Speed skating.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of that down here.
No. But yes, played sports. Average, maybe a little above average, but not exceptional.
So do you still follow hockey?
Yes. Now, most years ago, I was really, watching sports all the time. Now, I still really enjoy baseball, hockey, football, but most of them during the regular season, I'm not a big fan. But come playoff time, yeah, I really enjoy them.
Who's your favorite teams in baseball, hockey?
Well, I've become a Cardinals fan
Thank you.
since we moved here.
Good
Probably,
smart man.
probably,
I see what you guys see in this guy.
probably growing up, and most likely just because they were the winning team, it would have been the Yankees.
Yeah.
Which is a great story, or at least I think it's a great story. I'm not a gambler. I very rarely bet on anything or spend any money gambling. And I think that came from a lesson that I got taught by my mother. In 1960, when the Yankees and Pirates played, my mother and I bet $1, and I bet on the Yankees. And of course, the Pirates won.
Bill Mazeroski.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my mother made me give her $1 because that was the bet. And at that early age, I thought, this is terrible. I gave away my money for nothing. So I think that somewhere in the back of my mind, that really was the thing. I've just never been a gambling person.
So if you would have won that bet, you might have ended up in Vegas as a card dealer. Or something.
May have.
Probably a good thing then. How far was Glaze Bay? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
How far was that from the U.S. border?
Oh, let's see. You're talking probably about a 10 to 12-hour drive.
But American sports were still very popular.
Oh, yeah.
In those areas.
Oh, yeah. Sports were a big thing. Of course, the original NHL hockey was just 6 teams, 2 in Canada and 4 in the United States. But Canada was on, hockey was on every week. Saturday night was huge. It was hockey night in Canada. There was always a game on. It was usually either Montreal or Toronto playing one of the other teams.
So I prepared a lot of topics, and then all of you people gave me suggestions and ideas and thoughts to talk to this. I understand you didn't finish high school. Is that right?
I'm a high school dropout.
Did okay.
A lot of people know that, but there's a lot of people that probably don't. And that was a kind of an interesting thing too. And we're talking now back in the late 60s. Students in high school could take college credit courses, much the same as they do here. But if you were going into science or engineering, they would not give you credit at university. And I think somebody said, hey, you're punishing some of your smarter kids because they don't get any credit for doing this. So my junior year in high school, they started a program that they were going to take a small number of students who were going into science or engineering after their junior year. And I was accepted and got a scholarship to go. So, yeah, I did not finish high school.
So you're a college graduate, right? And probably beyond, right?
Right.
But not a high school graduate.
Not a high school.
I've never heard of that.
I have
I guess
thought.
I have people. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I have, but that's unusual.
I've thought a couple of times. I know a lot of the people who would have graduated in 1970. That would have been the year I would have graduated. As the tag along to the alumni is honorary 1970 graduate.
That's only right.
But no, never did finish high school.
Were you an above average student?
You know, I was, but and I actually talked to some people here who have done very well academically, who are about my age. Back then, it was not the pressure that there is now on the kids to do well, and you have to have this grade point average, and you got to take this course, and you have to do better than your neighbor is doing, your friend. There was a small group of us that were very smart, but I didn't know whether I was first or second or fourth. But yeah, obviously I did very well.
When and why did you start to think about the medical field?
When I started college, I really thought that I would be a high school teacher and probably coach baseball or hockey. And when I started college, that's what I thought. Started in physics, loved the first year, took way too many hours that first year and somehow miraculously way over my head and did well. But when I went the second year and it got more into theoretical physics and electromagnetic field theory and linear algebra, I just didn't. So my academic advisor, I actually was not doing well because I just didn't like him. He said, you know, you have a full scholarship. Take the rest of this semester off, come back, and I'll guarantee that your scholarship, you'll get them. If you stay and you don't do well, you're going to lose your scholarship. So when I went back, I was in chemistry and biology. I think if he had directed me towards engineering, I think I would have did mechanical engineering.
You might have ended up at Crane.
Never know.
But at that point, you really didn't have any interest in coming across the border.
No interest in coming across the border.
Had you been across the border before? Had you been to these states prior to that?
No, I had never been. So biology and chemistry, the next 3 years, and still wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I was taking all these chemistry, biology courses and decided to apply to medical school and got accepted.
Just decided to apply for medical school.
Yeah. And because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Well, and I think it still is, it was so difficult to get in. Once I got accepted, I said, well, I better go. This is an opportunity that not very many people get. And
now, was your mom still with you at this time?
Yes.
Fully supportive?
My mom was so happy that I was doing well in university. She never directed me in one direction or another, never pushed me to go into medicine. As I said, really probably thought that I would end up being a teacher. And obviously she was tremendously happy when I got into medical school, but never a word pushing me in one direction or another.
So you're in medical school, which of course I'm assuming very, very difficult. Did you ever have any regrets that you went into that field in the first year or two of your medical school?
No,
No.
other than uh, the fact that it was so much more time consuming than undergraduate. It just, uh, you look back at it now, of course, you're young, and it's a lot different. Just hard to believe. We would go to class or labs from 8 in the morning till 4, and then a lot of times you were back. We had desks, cubicles at the medical school. Virtually everybody went back at night, and you were there from 6 until 11 or midnight most nights. Uh, just the amount of work was
Yeah.
mind-boggling.
How much schooling did you have to go to before you actually had your first practice or your first patients?
The total was 9 years.
9 years.
Now that included 1 year where I worked full-time at the hospital as an intern, which that has changed too. When I was in medical school, there was no family practice residency. That was just starting. That started when I was in medical school. So you could do a general rotating internship, and after 1 year, you could apply for your license and go to practice. Now the family practice residency is 3 years.
But you did your first practice in Canada?
Yes.
Do you remember, not the name, not even what they look like, but that very first patient and what you felt like? Were you comfortable? Were you confident? Were you, I don't know what I got into?
I don't remember my first office patient, but I remember the first night at the emergency room. I was there for about 2 hours, and we got a call that there was a mining accident.
Oh my goodness.
These were underground coal mines, and I was terrified. I was to the point of, physically being sick.
Who would, right?
What's happening? And I was by myself. There was no backup. Just me and the nursing staff. And so 25 minutes go by, an hour goes by, and still nothing. And finally, we hear the ambulance coming and the sirens, and they back up to the door. And the guy that was in the mining accident actually got out of the ambulance himself. He had had something fall on his foot. It wasn't even broken. And it in a way, it taught me a lesson fairly early that don't worry about it until it gets in there. You just never know. But I'll never forget when I saw that man crawling out of the ambulance, and he nothing, not even on a stretcher. I could have broken his neck or something. But so I remember that was one of my first memories.
So when you get those calls back then and in the early going, you didn't know what you were getting into, right?
No, but I am going to tell you, I had a wonderful, wonderful lady who was the nursing supervisor, who had been at the hospital for 30 plus years. And there was a doctor on staff who was board certified in internal medicine and anesthesia. And if I would get in trouble or not quite sure, should I do this? Should I do this? The nurse would say, now she wouldn't say, Poirier, you're a dummy. Here's what you need to do. She would say, often in cases like this, Dr. Roach would suggest doing this. And that was my key. So I probably learned more acute care medicine from that lady in a year than I did my 5 years of medical school. She was wonderful.
What would you tell, I guess by then you were probably approaching 30 years old, right? With schooling and everything and getting there. What would you tell that young doctor, if you could say anything back then with the wisdom that you have now? What advice would you give other than what you said earlier about the family in regards to the emergency room or what have you? What advice might you give? things that you've learned?
I I think, as I said, don't worry about things that may happen.
Mm-hmm.
Deal with what you do and have that confidence that you're well trained enough that you're going to know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, ask somebody. Because if you're sick and dying in front of me, you don't really care. If I ask the nurse or the janitor or anybody who can help us, you're not going to think less of me for that. You're going to be glad that, hey, he asked for somebody else's opinion. So I think, uh, obviously, I think most people who go through a residency program are well trained. Uh, it's a matter of seeing the common things that rashes and headaches and dizziness and uh, those are the difficult things to deal with. Most likely the life threatening problems, you're going to be trained what to do with that. But always be uh, quick to ask an opinion or somebody's help if you're not sure. And I found that with the nurse practitioners. Now, most of the nurse practitioners that I work with are well trained, they're experienced, they are people who worked at the hospital, worked in emergency rooms, so they're experienced. But the couple of new ones that I have, I've told them, you have cases you want to review, you call me and we'll go through them and see if you're making the right decision or ask me what I may do, even though it may not be right. Ask for help about things, ask for an opinion. Uh,
So you've made your tour of the southern states now for the week. You came to Martin County. Who were the first people maybe that helped you be convinced that this is the right place to be?
well, I, I think the decision ultimately had to be mine. Uh, we were very pleased back then with the hospital in Jasper. I think that hospital has been well run from the day that I first came. Uh, Herman Coleman and Larry Jones were the administrative people we met, and uh, they really painted a good picture, but it was not an exaggerated picture. Uh, when we came here to town, uh, the the first few people, and of course this was all set up before we came because they wanted to take us and show us town, show us some housing, the school system. We had a meeting with a lot of people from town the first day we were here, out at the lake, actually, had lunch out there. But two of the people we met the very first time to Lagodi are still friends of mine. Rex Strawn and Mark Jones.
Rex Strong
And
and
Mark,
Mark Jones might be responsible for keeping this man here.
so I have told several people over the years that when I came, because there was some concern, Poirier, foreigner,
Oh yeah.
can he speak English? So I've told a number of people that the first year or so that I was here, every Thursday afternoon, Rex Strawn and Mark Jones would take me out and give me English lessons.
No, no, that is not true.
No, it's not true. Took me out and gave me beer drinking lessons, maybe, but no. So yes, Mark and Rex.
Why those two? How did you come in
Well,
contact with them?
I think uh, Mark was a young lawyer in town, so he was someone professional who moved here. Rex was in real estate even back then. Showed me, around town and housing. And Don Ocher, who was an optometrist here, was also in that group.
Okay.
So it
Yeah.
was.
So how long did it take? I'm guessing it still happens. Dr. Poirier, Dr. Poirier, how do you say that?
Yeah.
You still get that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Poirier. Now that sounds good.
Yeah.
But Poirier, I remember that whenever you were in
I
town.
should have, over the years, I should have kept all the mail that I had with different spellings of my name, because there's 20 plus, I'm sure.
Who else was influential whenever you came to town?
Well, you hate to start naming names because
Sure,
you're going
and
to
you don't have
forget
to.
somebody.
You don't have to.
But I tell you, Rex's parents were wonderful people. First couple of Thanksgivings that we were here, uh, they invited us to come and have Thanksgiving dinner with their family. Uh, Joe and Vicky Doyle were wonderful. They, as soon as we had met, anything that they had going on at their home, as far as a community party or post basketball games or celebrations of any kind, we were invited to their place. Uh, George and Jeanette Templin, another uh, couple. Jerry and Inez Larkin were wonderful people, again, inviting us to their home. And so a lot of people, of course, uh, after a brief period of time here, Carolyn and Matt Arvin and their family was just, I don't know how we would have made it without Carolyn, really.
Well, I want to ask you about Carolyn in particular because I know over the years, Carolyn refers to your children as her grandchildren.
Right.
So where did that start? I mean, how did they get to know you?
Well, Carolyn worked for me.
Carolyn worked for you.
Carolyn Arvin and Dorothy Arvin were my first two nurses when I came here. And I actually interviewed them on the second visit. The hospital had lined up potential candidates for secretary and nurses. And it worked out wonderful because Carolyn and Dorothy both wanted to work part-time. So it was perfect. Somebody goes on vacation, well, you can work some extra days. So Carolyn was my nurse. Well, when Philip was born, of course, there's no grandmother and grandfather here, and Carolyn asked if she could be the honorary American grandmother. And see, she had no grandchildren at the time. So Philip was her first grandchild. But yes, over the years, uh, Philip and Lorraine were treated the same as Carolyn's own grandchildren. Wonderful.
She was quite the personality, wasn't
Yes.
she? Yeah, she was great. Well, you learned probably pretty quickly just by being around all those people you just mentioned that this is a basketball town, right?
Right.
Did you get submersed in that culture at all?
Uh, Immediately.
Immediately.
And that was good because I liked sports. And the first basketball game that we went to uh, here in Lagodi, I was amazed. I mean, the gym was packed, and this was just a regular, November, early in the year basketball game. And basketball in high school where I grew up, I mean, you would probably be lucky if there was 100 or 200 people at the most at a basketball game. A little bit more at a hockey game, but it amazed me.
Where was your office when you first moved to town? Where were you located?
On Southeast First Street, where the what's there now? The probation office, right up from the marathon.
You were right across the street from me. I lived on 102 East Washington Street.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember that now. Of course, that was a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But that was your first location.
That was first. We were there from 81 until about 2000 when we moved into the other office.
You were there for 19
Yes.
years? Wow. You were really truly my neighbor. Actually, I was kind of moved away by then, but yeah. So emotional attachments to patients. I mean, I just can't imagine any other profession, of course. And I'll speak of Carolyn Armin. I mean, when she was your nurse, she was the de facto grandmother. You cared for her, I would assume, right,
Yeah.
up until the end. But that's just an example. There had to have been hundreds of people that you care for, and then of course everybody sooner or later dies. But I guess you never get over it. But was there a point when you just had to accept that?
It it is one of the most difficult things, and I don't think most people can understand. I've had two people somewhat recently who have died that uh, they've been friends and patients for
Right.
the better part of 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a double loss. And I do know a couple of physicians who one of their main things about retiring was uh, I just can't continue to lose close friends and patients
Yeah.
like this. It's really difficult.
Yeah, I would assume if there's turnover in the medical field, I was told you're emotional. There you go. Well, obviously it's an emotional question.
Yeah,
It's emotional. It's an
it
emotional.
is
Yeah.
it is really difficult. In some ways, it's difficult on the other end though, because there is a group of, and of course we never know. You could be 10 and die, but there's a group of people now who are in their late 70s and 80s who uh, I hate to leave because they are getting
Yeah.
close to that time that, even if you're in good health and you're 80, one bad illness or one bad injury and it
Mm-hmm.
could
Mm-hmm.
spiral and become.
Right.
And I hate to leave some of those people. Uh, and it's not because I'm going to be any better a doctor than anybody else who will see them, but I've gone to see these people at home. We've sat and we've talked. It may be a medical visit. So you get to know these people. So you want to be there to help with final care. But yet at the same time, it's probably one of the best things about retiring that I'm going to be able to deal with that person as a friend rather than trying to
Just like the rest of
separate
us. Yeah.
that those two things.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Yeah.
yes, it is very difficult.
Well, on the other end, what's the most rewarding part of your 40 plus years of career in the medical field?
Oh, I think the rewarding part, and again, that's because of being here in a smaller community. I think the most rewarding part is that you do get to know people as friends and almost family. I mean, uh, I don't know how many houses I've been in Martin County, and as I said, you go and you visit from a professional point of view, but uh, getting to know generations of people. I have several families that, I have great grandparents, grandparents, adult children, little children. And I think that's been the wonderful thing is getting to know people, and uh, that's been the reward. I do think that general medicine, primary care, uh, really is the best type of medicine. You get to see all the 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 bad things, but for the most part, everybody has got a lot more good qualities than bad.
You've talked about a number of cases where you're visiting homes on a professional basis. How many house calls do you make generally in the course of a month?
Well, not nearly as many now as we used to. And I pick and choose. There are some people that it is just too difficult for them to get to the office. And those people, particularly if they're sick. So it may only be two or three now. At one time, it was really a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, it was just an easier thing to do. Uh, some of the problem now, of course, is years ago you do house calls, you could take your office note, you could write it, and it was done, and it gets stuck in the chart. Now it has to be put in the computer. So,
Insurance.
but still, there are people that maybe acutely ill, and it's just too difficult for them to get to the office.
What about phone calls at night, middle of the night? Over the years, I know you've gotten a lot, but you still get those?
Not nearly as many, very rarely, really now, which I think is a wonderful thing. Uh, there are always going to be a very small percentage of people, and it doesn't matter. You can be a school teacher, uh, you can be a carpenter. There are people that are going to call you at all hours of the day or night or Sunday afternoon. Uh, but for the most part, people are very respectful, and it makes Mondays really busy because Saturday, Sunday, people try not to bother you. So not as much as it used to be. Of course, there's urgent care centers and there's full-time people in the emergency room now. But at one time, uh, it was a 7 day a week. It still is, but most of the stuff that I do on Saturdays and Sundays tends to be fairly brief, except I'm getting caught up with chart work. But at one time, uh, it was frequent that there was hardly a day of the week that I didn't go to the office for something or somebody.
And then just one other question around that same type of thing. How many times are you out and about at a game or where at church, whatever, and Doc, that knee is bothering me a little bit. What do you think that is? You get that a lot still?
Still. And the thing about that, and I've talked about this with other providers, it's one thing if the person is actually a patient of yours and you know something
Sure.
about them. It's very difficult just cold say, oh, I got this sore elbow. What do you think it is? Well, it could be so many different things, and you have to be, I guess you don't have to be, but I've always tried to be polite about it and try to point them in the right direction. But it's very difficult to just make a diagnosis recommendation. So, but yes, still get that. The nurses still get it. I know that there's a couple of people who have worked for me over the years that say they do their grocery shopping in Washington or Jasper because they're tired of going to the grocery store and people asking them questions about their medicine or their blood pressure.
Yeah.
But as I said, it's it's more often than it should be. Most of it is harmless, but it is difficult to make any kind of a. The other thing that happens a lot is somebody will say, "Hey, can you phone in my blood pressure medicine for me?" And I'll say, "What are you on?" "Oh, I don't know. It's that little white pill."
That'd be me.
You know how.
That'd be Losartan.
If you're taking 4 medicines, maybe you should know the names and doses, uh, but that's been tolerable. For the most part, it's been okay. We've had a couple of people who have made a little bit of a nuisance by coming to the house at times for things that aren't urgent.
They come to your house.
Yeah.
So they make the house call to your house. Okay. In the middle of dinner.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, do you get this? Because I would be this person. My doctor is Dr. Campbell, by the way. You know Mark Campbell.
Yes.
And ever since we moved here 35 years ago, we worked in Jasper, and so there was an association there. In fact, he just retired this week, I believe.
Yes, I think it was
Well,
maybe yesterday.
here I know that.
August,
I think it was
or
because
maybe today, August the 12th, I think was
August 12th. Because my appointment, we're off subject now, but my appointment is August 16th. So he said, "Sorry, I retired August 12th or whatever it was." So now I've got Joseph Money. So hopefully he's a good doctor.
Yeah, I know Joe.
But anyway, so I might go into him, and hey, I haven't felt that good. I've been a little dizzy, but Doc, wait, I looked it up on the internet, and what I found was this could be really serious. So what do you think? How much of that do you get?
More,
Yeah,
quite often.
that'd be me.
Some of it is totally bizarre and unrelated.
That'd be me too.
Some of it actually can be very helpful. It's a starting point for conversation.
Yeah.
Uh, Again, the majority of people are very good, and they'll say, I've read this. Do you agree with this, or what do you think? Now, the people that insist, well, this is what you have to do, that can be a little bit difficult because if you don't agree with their self-diagnosis, you don't want to go down that path of testing and things. Uh, so it hasn't been a very big problem. A lot more people do it, but still, it's not been bad. Girls at the office sometimes comment about people getting their MD from the computer, but it's not been a major problem. For the most part, it's been okay.
Now, how do you continue to learn? There's learnings in the medical field that come out all the time, but how do you stay up to date as best you can?
Uh, I get several magazines every week, medical magazines. There is a certain number of actual structured hours of continuing medical education that you need, that you have to do. But I have a couple of magazines that I look through virtually every week to see articles that are applicable to primary care and try to skim through those and keep up. So it's through a structured continuing medical education, but uh, the magazines, as I said, I have a family practice magazine and then the Journal of the American Medical Association that I look through every week. Also now, something that I have found very interesting, on satellite radio, there's a doctor program out of the Langone Medical Center in New York City, and I listen to that a lot. There's a couple of shows that are very good. It was pretty helpful at times through COVID as to getting updates as to newer recommendations. And
Speaking of COVID, how much of a disruption was that to you and your office over the past couple of years?
we never closed the office. Uh, we went for a brief period of time that we were very selective as to how many people we saw. It wasn't the regular office numbers. Uh, People who were sick. There were, of course, clinics set up to deal with those, but we stayed open the entire time. Uh, a lot of physicians' office went to telemedicine, seeing people. Not being a technical guy, I didn't like doing that.
Not much on the web Zooms, right?
Did very little of that, but it was a brief period of time that it side railed us a little bit. But as I said, we never closed. I know there were a lot of offices that completely closed for a while, a lot that were open for months with telehealth visits only, but we stayed open the entire time.
So, in all of your recent learnings, did you ever find anything about the benefits of that little red pill? I have no idea what it is, but I was asked to ask him about the little red pill.
It's
Enlighten me.
it's a funny story in one way, and it's kind of a sad story in another way. I saw a patient, only time I ever saw him, sick, sinus type problems. I have a habit, a lot of times I write out instructions for people. So I wrote out his instructions, gave him his medicine, his prescriptions. And he said, how do you doctors keep from getting sick? And I said, well, we're exposed to a lot of things, so we have better resistance. I had had an Amish gentleman in the week before who told me, he said, I think God helps take care of you because you take care of so many people. And I said, I would like to think that that was true, but I said, it's probably just more good luck than good management. So he said, somebody told me when you go to doctor school, they give you magic red pills that you take when you get sick. Well, I had 2 Tylenol tablets, generic Tylenol, and they were little red tablets. And when he went to go out, I put his chart under my arm and I showed him those 2 red tablets. Greg, if the devil had appeared on the spot, that poor man couldn't have been any more terrified. He was absolutely, you could tell by his face that he was just horrified. He never came back.
Oh,
Because I really think that he probably thought I was some kind of a voodoo doctor from New Orleans or something. So I've kept the little generic bottle of Tylenol, and I have written on there, magic red pills.
and that's common with your patients? Do they know that? Do you pull that every now and then?
Every now
on
and
the right
then.
person, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you need to keep your patients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have done it if I had known. I thought he'd kind of laugh at it, but no, he
No.
was horrified.
I thought maybe he just didn't come back because he took the magic red pills and he was fine, but no.
He
Have you kept in touch with him at all, or was that the last you saw of him?
That was the only time I ever saw him ever came back.
The magic little red pill.
So I keep them. I have a whole bottle at home.
Back in 1991, was it not? Your family had a unique experience with your son at a wedding that ended up on America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yes.
Right? So tell me about, we're going to watch the clip. In fact, we'll let the people watch the clip right now, okay? And then we'll talk about it.
If anyone objects to the joining of these 2 people, forever hold your face.
So Philip would have been how old at the time?
6-ish.
Okay.
5, 6 right. In that neighborhood.
And this was at the wedding of
probably 7.
Philip Arvin and Gayla Kemp.
Right.
Right. Did you see this going on at the time?
No. I knew what he was doing because I was in the choir loft too.
Oh, okay.
But he was just making funny faces, right. And I did not know that it was being videoed.
And this was during the wedding service?
This was before the wedding started. And Gayla was sitting up in the choir loft.
She looked very serious.
Yeah. And Philip was the ring bearer, so he was sitting behind her and making the faces. But no, I did not know that it was being videoed.
So when did you find out that? Well, first of all, tell me kind of what was the process of it actually being submitted?
I don't know who submitted it. I assume it was probably Phil and Gayla.
And this was big news in this small town.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And of course, the video won the first show that it was on, and then ended up getting to the finals. And that's when we went to California for the taping of the show.
So tell me a little bit about that. Was that everything you thought it would be, or was it very chaotic? So you were at the show. In fact, I'll say if I remember, but I know I was told, but I think I remember too. There was a shot of you right in
Yes.
the audience.
Yes.
I haven't seen that video in a long time. But tell me about that experience.
It was wonderful. We ended up doing 2 trips. We took the trip to California for the taping of the championship show, and we also had a trip to Disneyland. And both of those trips were wonderful.
You mean that they took care of?
Oh yeah,
ABC or whoever it was?
yeah. And when we went to California, we stayed at a beautiful hotel. Everything was paid for, first class. I mean, just wonderful. Bob Saget just couldn't have been a nicer person. He came out before the taping of the show started and talked to the guests that were on, was friendly, took all kinds of time to speak with people. It was just a first class event, both of those things. It was wonderful.
And how much did you end up winning?
Well, I think at the time, so they paid the expenses to go to the trip for the taping of the show, and Phil and Gail, I think, won, and I'm not sure, but I think it was $10,000.
It was their video.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they also won a trip to, which one was in Florida? Disney World. Yeah. They also won a trip to Disney World, so they gave us the trip to Disney World too. So we got to go to California, and we got to go to Disney World, and it as I said, it was just wonderful. Everything was paid for and just first class. It was wonderful.
Yeah, that was big news. Everybody
Yeah.
was gathered around their
Yeah.
TV to watch that. So
Every once in a while, for years after, it would come up in reruns every once in a
Yeah.
while. And somebody'd say, "Oh, I saw you on television again last night."
So tell me about Philip today. What's he up to today?
Philip and his wife Leah and 2 children live in Jasper.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That close.
Philip is one of the, I guess, administrative or executive people at Jasper Engine and Transmission, and his wife Leah is a pharmacist for CBS in Jasper, and TJ is in grade 4, and Lizzie is in grade 2.
Well, you get to see them quite often.
Yes.
I've got 3
Almost
grandchildren
every
in Jasper
weekend
as
during
well.
the summer, come to the pool.
Oh, that's fantastic. I did not, I wasn't aware of that. Well, good. All right. So we had a little fun with Philip. Now a little fun with Lorraine. All right. Because I found something, and it was the announcement of her birth. All right. You know where I'm going with this, right? So
yes, but I haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to read it to you. The folks are looking at this right now. So this is on the birth announcement of Lorraine Poirier back in 1990 in the Lagodi Tribune. It goes like this: It a girl, not it's a girl. It a girl. Poirier Productions proudly announced their new 1990 model Lorraine Colette, wheelbase 20 3/4 inches, weight 8 pounds. Designer and production engineer Rita Poirier Campbell, chief engineer James Poirier. A special thanks goes to the technical director, Dr. Terry Brown, and his assistants. Model released at 6:23 p.m. July 15th, 1990, and features water-cooled exhaust and changeable seat covers. This model was displayed at Jasper Memorial Hospital. Previous classic model is Philip Bartholomew James in 1984. Management guarantees no other model this year. Now that is creative. Now that has Carolyn R written all over. Is that Carolyn R?
Yes.
I thought so.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I don't remember that. You'd think I would, although maybe I was out of town at the time. But everybody had to agree to that, right? Or did she just throw it out there?
No, it was approved, but cute, very cute.
That is. I've never seen anything like that. Now I've seen creative obituaries, but a creative birth announcement like that.
I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, it a girl.
Yeah.
Well, where's that girl today?
Loren lives in Chicago. Is doing very well. We hope that maybe with COVID it would drive her a little bit closer to Martin County, but she really likes Chicago. She's been there since she finished at Purdue. Uh, Loves travel, which of course that got sidetracked completely with COVID. Uh, she tries to go somewhere exciting every year and has been traveling again. So, uh, as I said, she really.
But you don't get to see her as much as you'd like.
No.
Yeah. Did you get up there?
Uh, Not recently, but yes, we have been there and done some interesting things in the big city. The area where she lives is wonderful. Most big cities, of course, are a whole lot of little cities put together. Uh, Everybody thinks about all the shootings and murders in Chicago. Unfortunately and terribly, that goes on, and it's basically in one section. The area where she lives is very nice. She has an apartment that she overlooks Lake Michigan.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to think how much, though. I've never asked.
You never asked?
No.
Don't.
Ah,
Yeah. So I understand too, between you and Maggie, 14 grandchildren?
about that,
Yeah.
because Philip has two, and
She told me
Mac,
14, so
yeah, that there's 10, and then there's a couple that are associated because of marriage, and we just consider them all grandkids. They're all
nothing like
equal.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful because, as I said, Philip is in Jasper. Maggie's three boys all live here in Lagodi now. They've all moved back. We're going to have to start going to basketball games again because William will be in grade 8 and is playing basketball under the tutelage of
Coach
Dave Smith and Mike
Yeah.
Wagner.
Isn't that something?
I told Dave he has to behave himself, though, because I said, Maggie and I are going to be going to the games again, so we don't want you causing trouble and
Grandparents.
getting thrown out of the.
Yeah. So what's year number 1 in retirement look like for you? Can you see that far?
No.
No, can't even see that far.
Because I'm not quite sure, as I said earlier, Dr. Alex, there's extra paperwork to be done. And of course, anytime you're involving the state government agency and the federal government agency, it's just little minute, stupid things that you just don't know when they're going to get taken care of. So I was supposed to be done July 31st. Well, we're definitely here until the end of September. And matter of fact, at the meeting in July, hospital administration asked, just out of interest, do you have anything planned the rest of this calendar year? So I don't know what's going to happen there. I do intend to do the administrative part with the nurse practitioner for a while. Hopefully, we'll get away for a little while this winter, but.
Do you travel? I mean, are you one that enjoys travel? Or Maggie?
I used to travel a lot years ago, but recently, no. I'm not the best traveler in the world because I tend to panic too easily when things don't go right. We went to the Caribbean this winter. Philip and Leah took Maggie and I, and Philip took care of everything. And there were a couple of bumps in the road on the way, and I didn't have to worry about anything. Philip took care. So there are some places, parts of right here in the United States that I think we'd like to go and see.
What might those be? I'm just curious myself.
I have never been to the Northwest and in through Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, in through there. We've been to the Southwest because Maggie's from Los Angeles.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Hollywood.
we've met in the middle.
You
We're,
did.
we're both almost exactly 2,000 miles from where we grew up.
That's amazing.
Yeah. She's as far southwest as you could go without getting on a boat, and I'm as far northeast without getting on a boat. So, uh, I just it has always been so difficult to get away. I think it just would be relaxing to be able to uh, just go without any specific plan, and we don't have to be back Friday at 6 p.m. or Monday morning at 7 a.m. if we're a day late or whatever. So
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Of course, I had thought that too, but there's always doctor's appointments.
yeah,
Always doctor's appointments, it seemed like. They get in the way. Um, I often think how fortunate we are not only to have had you for 40 plus years, but Dr. Sutton, who retired, I don't know how many years, maybe you do know in this community. I remember when he first came to the community, we were
right.
one of the first people that he would know. I think my brother was good friends with his. And so he was getting new to the community too. So we must do something right to keep really good doctors for a really long time.
The second visit that I made to Lagodi, coming to look at housing and finalize a contract, I got a message actually at the hospital because didn't have cell phones then.
Right.
Got a message to call a doctor who was in a community not too far from here. He'd been here a year or so. He was also from Canada. And he told me, he said, I don't think you should come. The people here are not very nice. They're very clannish. They stick together. They're just, well, I think you have to make an effort. I'm coming here. Yes, people have families and friends that they've gone to school with. Probably in part due to my job, I was out all the time and became involved in things very quickly. Uh, I just always felt like, almost from the start, that I was not a stranger.
So as a young doctor with a strange accent and a funny name, you never felt as an outsider.
Not really. No, I really didn't. And again, I don't know. It may in part be due to my personality. Uh, Maybe some people thought, well, what the hell is he doing here? He didn't go to school with us, or he
Right.
doesn't go to our church,
You
or
know what, though?
he's
When they're
not in
sick,
his.
they don't care, do they?
No, no, I never felt that way. Uh, I I just, this is my home now. At one time thought that maybe would move when I retired, but now with all the grandchildren here, this is
Right.
home, and we'll be staying. It it's kind of interesting. I've watched your interview with Dick Larkin, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of a funny story with my son Philip. Philip was at a meeting at work a couple of years ago, and he got introduced to somebody, and the guy that was talking to him said, "Now, Poirier, that's a Martin County name, right?" So Philip and I got laughing, and the more we thought about it, there's no Larkins here anymore.
No, I don't. Well, the Birdman, Bill Larkin, just passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who he was a wonderfully
Oh, I
interesting
tell
person.
people I missed an opportunity there to do.
But if you count out the Poiriers that are Martin and Dubois County,
more than Larkin.
yeah, I'd tell you how much things have changed. But your original question that we got started on with this, no, I just never felt like I was an outsider. And I said there were a lot of people who, and you don't, I said earlier, you don't want to start thanking people because you're always going to miss people, but so many people that invited us to family events and weddings, and I just never felt that way.
I'm guessing you could have said the same thing when you came here. Funny accents and funny names, right? You know, Southern
Yeah.
Indiana. I always give the guests just a form, whether they wanted to take it or not, take a few minutes, take 30 seconds. And in your case, it's kind of unique because you're retiring from the medical field, and uh, that teachers, policemen, probably the most important fields that we have. What is it that you'd like to say that maybe you haven't said uh, that this would be a good opportunity?
I just feel tremendously fortunate to have ended up here, and you know, I think that there are very few things that are coincidental or happenstance. I think that I was probably put here for a reason and purpose. Uh, I feel very blessed through my whole life that things at different points in time went in the right direction, and you can only believe that you're responsible for so much of that stuff. And yes, if you work hard and you do things properly, uh, yeah, you probably deserve some things. But I think it's much bigger than that. I think that you are put in certain places at certain times for a particular reason, and it has been a wonderful journey. There have been uh, some bad days. There have been some uh, rough times that in part I created myself. But overall, it has just been a tremendous career, uh, tremendous life, so many wonderful times and memories, and a lot of people that I have to thank, just if nothing else, for their kindness and friendship. It, it, it has just been wonderful. I don't know, and of course, never will know. I don't know if I had stayed close to home, would it turned out to have been the same type of situation. I'm not sure. It just this has been wonderful.
And on a light note, you and I were talking about your dress. You've always been a dapper, young, and now an older gentleman. Well, I've got proof, and the people are seeing that proof right now, that you were also a dapper young man between 2 and 4 years of age.
Yeah.
Was that always?
I have seen, my mother sent me a number of old photographs a few years back, and it is kind of funny to look through them at 4 and 5 years of age with bow ties and
Do you remember being made to put those on, or it's just something that you like to do? Or normal?
I don't ever remember kicking up a fuss about, no, I don't want to wear that, and I was uh, always well dressed, going to school, uh, went shopping and picked out clothes every year for school, and so no,
It's always been a part of it.
it just always been a part, and it. I look to some of those pictures, whether it be pictures of uh, uncles who would have on suits and ties, and uh, all my uncles worked as underground coal miners, and I think for birthdays and Christmas and Sundays, it was always suit and tie to go to church, and so I guess it was just something that I kept up.
Do you have family still in Nova Scotia?
I was an only child, so no brothers, sisters. Both my parents are dead. All my uncles and aunts. Now, I have a number of cousins who still live there, but no close family.
As we end this episode, you're going to see about 4 minutes. So hang with it. 4 minutes of Facebook comments that were directed to the good doctor here in love, affection, and appreciation. And I know there's a lot more. And if yours isn't on there, it's only because there is a time limit of some sort. But I know you've seen some of them. You'll see more. And Doctor, the appreciation, I know it couldn't be more from this community. And although I've not known you very well, it's certainly a privilege and an honor to talk to you and sit down today. And I thank you for your service.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity of doing this. And it would take me a long time to go through the list, but people have just been so kind, and as I said, I just don't think that there would have been a better situation for me, and I do appreciate the comments. Some of the things that you forget that you did, and at the time didn't seem like a big deal, but for family or particularly parents taking care of sick or injured children. So as I said, it's been a journey. I hope to kick around for a while, and who knows what I may end up doing. It's going to be difficult, I think, to do nothing. So,
well, I hope sooner than later you have that decision to make, nothing or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Right. Dr. James Poirier, I've certainly got to know him much more as my Indiana neighbor, and some of you already knew probably just about everything we've talked about, but not everything, I'm sure. So we thank you for watching. We thank Dr. Poirier, and we thank you for all your comments and the appreciation for Dr. Poirier in his soon-to-be retirement. Thank you for watching.